Welcome back, my friends, to AA Recovery Interviews. I'm your host, Howard Allen, and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where Alcoholics Anonymous members from around the world share their extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. There are over 115 awesome interviews in this podcast series. I invite you to scroll through my past episodes on any podcast app to listen to them all. Today's new episode features George M., another longtime friend whom I met within my first 5 years in the program. Though it seems like just yesterday, George is now 89 years old and approaching 40 years of sobriety in AA. Like many other guests who got sober late in life, George's story is a dichotomy between a well-lived life before getting sober and a life in AA. As a heavy yet highly functional alcoholic, he was able to successfully juggle his career in the financial industry and a marriage that included raising 4 children. As alcoholism grew more ominous in George's life, he found himself divorced and married 2 more times before he quit drinking. The impending yet inevitable loss of family and career at nearly 50 was enough to convince him to get sober. He found Alcoholics Anonymous in mid-1983 and has been sober since. His sobriety gave him the key to a whole new life, rich with as many experiences in sobriety as he had experiences in drunkenness before, but inevitably happier and more meaningful. I believe you will find George's story of fine interest and invite you to enjoy his rich and inspirational words of hope. So get comfortable and immerse yourself in today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews with my close friend and AA brother, George M.
Hi, I'm George, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, George.
Hi.
I really appreciate you doing this interview with me today on the AA Recovery Interviews podcast. To me, it's a special honor because I've been wanting you to participate with this process and allowing people to have their stories out to the world in a way that's most meaningful to those people and also to you.
I'm really happy that you asked.
I appreciate you taking the time. We're actually on a break period now at a retreat that we're both at on a beautiful Saturday afternoon in Houston, Texas.
Oh, it's terrific.
In the last 35 years, I've probably been to 35 retreats. And this is your first one.
Yeah, very first one, yes.
And you and I have known each other for the better part of that 35 years.
30 years, yes.
What's your sobriety date?
August the 21st, 1983.
So you're coming up on
40.
It's amazing. Did you ever think you'd stay sober that long?
No, but I'm really happy that I did.
How old were you when you got sober?
40, I was trying to figure the other day, 47 or 48. Now I'm 80, I'll be 89 in 2 weeks.
Knowing what you know now and what you've acquired over the last number of years, if you had the opportunity to get sober at an earlier age, when would that have been?
I would say probably about 35, 36.
So 35 would have allowed you the years in your youth and in your young adulthood and then into your adulthood to practice out there, whatever you were doing, drinking
Yes.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So you would have had the opportunity to at least enjoy it for a while before it affected you?
Yes, that's right. You're correct.
Did you enjoy it
My drinking?
when you were drinking?
Yeah, until I got to a point in my drinking when it didn't make any sense to drink anymore. I mean, I was really getting bad. Up to that point, I enjoyed it. But there was a point in my drinking where I no longer enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I had to stop for responsibilities at work, my responsibilities to my children and my wife. Mm. If I didn't stop drinking, I would have really gone downhill, and I did not want to do that. I had a good position, and I wanted to maintain it. Mm-hmm. So, as a result, I had to stabilize myself, and that's when I got into AA. Mm.
Did you intuitively know that, though, that you needed to stop, or were there signs coming in from the rest of your life that were telling you needed to stop?
Signs were coming in from the rest of my life. And my children, I wanted them to be proud of their father, and they couldn't have been the way I was going.
So some of your behavior was Was that coming to the surface or being pointed out to you by others when you were drinking?
It was being pointed out to me, and all I can say is that I just wish I had stopped earlier.
That's the first time I think I've ever asked that question of all the interviews that I've done about what age would you have wanted to stop. You said an age well into your adulthood, which to me makes sense because I didn't stop till I was almost 31.
Okay.
And I had to experience what I had to experience to get to that point.
Yeah.
It seems like the point at which we get sober is the point when we're supposed to or meant to.
Yeah, it appears that way, or it did with me anyway.
So what was going on in early August of 1983 for you right before you stopped drinking?
I had been through 2 divorces. My children were not very happy with me. I knew that if I continued drinking, that my job was, since I was in the financial business, I could endanger some people's financial lives.
Sure.
And I didn't want to do that at all. So those pressures finally got to me, and I had to make the decision.
And when you made that decision, what was the first thing that came to your mind about how to stop? In other words, how did you try to stop it at the very beginning?
Of course, like a lot of fellows in my position, they felt that they could just stop it as quickly as it started. That's incorrect. It never worked that way. And as long as I tried to stop it, and I talked to priests, I talked to counselors, my wife talked to me strongly about it. It finally came to me that if I didn't stop it, I was going to go down the tubes, and I didn't want to do that. So I had to stop, and the only way that I knew how to do that was to come into an organization like AA. I knew nothing about AA. I had never been to a meeting, but I understood from friends of mine that had joined AA that it really works very well and it's a comfortable place. So that's where I went.
So you had friends who were actually in the program who gave you a little bit of feedback about it?
A couple of friends, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you didn't go through any sort of treatment program or anything else like that?
No, I never did. I look back on it now and I wish I had, but that's in the past. And I did not go to a treatment situation. I decided to stop drinking, and it almost drove me crazy.
With the withdrawals?
Yeah, the withdrawal was very hard. So I finally got into AA, got a good sponsor, who I still have. And because of that, I was able to lean on him and lean on the program and then begin to lean on myself where I could stop it comfortably.
So you had that physical withdrawal going into it. During that withdrawal period, did you feel like it wasn't worth it? Was the withdrawal bad enough that gave you that kind of thinking?
Well, it's been so long, Howard, I'm not sure I can remember that. The feeling was there for a while, I can tell you that. I really wanted to just say the heck with it all and just keep drinking and, whatever came of that. But I knew I had to stop if I wanted all these other things in my life. A happy family and great kids and kids who respected me. I stopped and got into AA, got a good sponsor, and he talked with me and helped me, guided me, and I still have him today, which is 30-some years since I've been with him.
Before you went into AA and before you made the decision to stop, did you connect the dots between your drinking and the things that were happening to you? Did you have other reasons why those things happened outside of the fact that you were drinking?
At the time I stopped, I was concerned about my health. I was concerned about the closeness of my family, and I knew that I could not continue to drink and drink sociably. That's the big deal. When I stopped, I told my wife that I was going to learn to drink sociably. Well,
What does that look like?
that's a laugh.
What does that look like? I've never known an alcoholic who's been able to do that.
No, well, you look at one that was not able to do it either. You just can't drink sociably when you're hooked on booze. So that's why I went to my sponsor, who is strong, and he's very good at talking and visiting, and he and I hit it off very well at first, and we did later on certainly. But we had a good togetherness, and we grew together, and I'm very pleased that we did.
That's a real special bond, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is.
By the time you stopped drinking, how long had you been drinking in your life to that point?
I started drinking beer when I was 17, 18. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was into vodka and whiskey. About my mid-30s, I was pretty much on scotch and vodka. And I knew that I couldn't continue that and go to work at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And since I was working with a lot of clients and their finances, it wouldn't take but one or two really bad decisions on my part that I would lose my position and my job. So that really influenced me. And then when the kids started asking me if I was going to quit, I knew the jig was up. I had to stop.
Yeah, how did that, in what ways did that influence you? I mean, you had bosses and other people that you had a few of these mistakes would be the end for you, but you still drank during that period. Did you just not drink around work at all or just confine it to evenings and weekends?
Yes. I confine it to 6 o'clock at night or later, or confine it to Saturdays and Sundays. As my children got older, I had less of a chance to drink because they were watchful about everything I was doing.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was on a pedestal, and I was going to fall off any minute if I kept drinking. So that was it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people will stop is because of their kids or
Yeah.
their wives. I stopped because my wife, and we were married only a year and a half at the time, and things were going downhill very, very rapidly, and I knew I had some choices to make to either
Yes.
stop or lose the marriage.
Yes.
And of course, that was a big issue. So somebody who could drink in the evenings and on weekends is, to one extent or another, controlling their drinking, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that's what I ended up doing, controlling my drinking. But it got to a point where what liquor was doing to me was I couldn't cut it off at a certain point and feel mentally able to work for my clients. It would stretch, and it was like by the time I went to AA, it was like I was drinking, or I had the feeling I had been drinking almost all day long.
So all this is going on. The kids are, when you say you were influencing the kids with the drinking, how old were they when you first started to realize they were watching you very closely?
I guess the oldest one was about 17, 18.
So you'd been drinking that whole time till he got to that age. So he had seen it over the years.
Yes.
Did they ever, when they were younger, did they ever ask you to stop? Or did you ever get the sense that they wanted you to stop?
At first, no. But after it carried on and carried on, the way my wife was feeling about it, it came to my children, and they began feeling that way about it, that I should stop. You can't run away. I shouldn't say you. I couldn't run away from the fact that I wanted to drink. I enjoyed drinking, and I had to stop. I knew that, or my job was in jeopardy, and my position was in jeopardy, and I couldn't allow that to happen.
And that's often enough reason for people to stop.
Yes,
Right there. It sounds
that's
like it
right.
was for you. Now, did all this drinking, you mentioned two divorces, did drinking play a part in those two occurrences in your life?
Uh, I would say yes in both instances.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they would. It was just drinking was like a simmering little fire in the corner of the room, and the more I drank, the bigger the fire became.
Huh.
Fire meaning that my wife was, or wives were very upset with me for it. Uh, I was being accused of having a much totally different personality when I was drinking. Uh, I was told that if I continued drinking and they got a divorce, that they would get a divorce, stated that because of my drinking, I was dangerous to be around. And, when a wife gets filled up with enough stuff, that is, I don't mean booze, I mean when wives get filled up with enough bad stuff that the husband's doing, watch out.
Yeah.
They will let you know in no uncertain terms that enough is enough.
Right.
And that's what happened to me.
So they knew that you were drinking too much and that was affecting the marriage, stoking that fire over there in the corner. What were you telling yourself and what were you telling them about why you were drinking and why you shouldn't stop?
Initially, I was telling them that it relieved me a little bit of being nervous and being uptight. It just gave me a chance to relax a little bit. That's what I told them initially. But over a period of time, they could tell that it was a bold-faced lie.
In what way?
Well, because I said I would drink only because I wanted to relax a little bit with it, but I was hooked on it.
Huh.
And although they couldn't understand alcoholism per se,
Mm-hmm.
they could understand what was happening to me as a result of alcoholism. So I think that all came together, and I finally decided enough is enough.
What steps did you take to either revive or save the marriage, or were you just at the point where you were willing to let the marriage go for your drinking?
I got to the point rather quickly that I'd let the marriage go because of my drinking. I could not stop after I got hooked on it, and it was habitual, and I had to keep drinking.
So at that point, in a way that maybe you didn't understand then, you were saying drinking was more important to you than being married. Is that a safe assumption?
Uh, I guess that's another way of saying what I just said,
Yeah.
but I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was thinking that I would slow down on my drinking, and instead of drinking hot vodka or booze, I would drink beer or wine, and all of that stuff is, just water under the bridge. It didn't work, it wouldn't work, and I wanted to have something stronger to drink.
So you had a whole lot of evidence all around you that things are not working out because of the drinking,
Yes, absolutely.
but we find ways to justify it no matter what. I mean, I was that way too. And to me that's irrational thinking, with irrational meaning
Totally.
ignoring the rational part of judgment
Yes,
and going with the irrational part of it as a new reality.
I agree. I wish it didn't happen that way, but it did. It's another reason why I decided to stop and get into AA and stay with my sponsor and really do the very best I could to try, earnestly to try to stop drinking.
Hmm.
And once I started the program, I was able to stop it. Of course, I went to a lot of meetings and I had a lot of people say, "Attaboy, keep it up."
That's amazing that you were able to get to that point after so many years and so much happening as a consequence of your drinking. I mean, most people, they may go through one divorce or they may go through marital strains until they get enough self-knowledge about their own disease to do something about it. But to have to go through two divorces
Yeah,
to get to the point at which you were ready to make that decision? That must have been really tough.
It was tough. Emotionally, it was tough on me. Even though, I was full of vodka and scotch, it still made a point to me, to my mind, that I'm screwing up, and I don't want to screw up the children. I don't want to goof up another wife. So all of these things were working for me or against me.
Did you grow up in New York City?
New York City,
Whereabouts?
in the Bronx, the north part of the Bronx.
What was that like growing up?
I was lucky enough to live in an area that had grass growing and trees growing
Really?
and flowers. It was in the very north part of the Bronx near Westchester County. So it was really in a good area. But I had to go to, when I went to high school, I went to a place called Cardinal Hayes High School. And that was down at 149th Street. And I lived up at 233rd Street, which is a long way to go in the city. The 149th Street was a terrible place, and I didn't want to walk even by myself there. And that was at a time when I was a good athlete and I was in football and swimming and so forth. Today I get news bulletins from the Cardinal Hayes High School and also from Fordham University. And I look at the people, and it's not the same people I went to school with. I mean, they're different. And I don't know if it's their age only or what the difference is, but it's I could not go back to school where I went to high school today if I had to. I would go out of town if I could and go somewhere else. It's not a comfortable feeling.
Yeah. Do you ever get back and take a look around the old neighborhood?
I've been back about a year and a half ago.
Really? What was that like for you?
The best way I can explain it is, wow, has this gone down?
It's gone down.
Yeah, just the overall location has deteriorated.
But the school's still good, isn't it?
School's still good. Fordham University is still good. Cardinal Hayes High School has probably very few white students, but more Spanish and black students. But that's okay because they're apparently good kids, and
that's the demographics of the neighborhood too,
that's right.
Isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Was that a Jesuit school? And so you went to Fordham after high school?
Yeah.
Wow. That was kind of a direct link right there between Cardinal Hayes and Fordham?
It's not necessarily so, but I made it a direct link. It was easy for me to go out of Fordham, out of Cardinal Hayes High School, and go into Fordham University. The high school had some Jesuit priests, some brothers, no sisters. It was all boys. And then Fordham University was a Jesuit. It's the main Jesuit college in New York City.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Is there alcoholism that runs in your family?
That's the strange part. I had some distant uncles who were alcoholics, but my mother didn't drink, my father didn't drink, and I was the only child, so in the immediate family there was no drinking influence. No.
And when you drank for the first time at 18, were you doing it just as experimentation? Did you know what to expect when you drank, or what was your experience like when you first drank?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relief that I got from the realism of life and the pressure of the job and so forth. But when I finally decided to stop, I was concerned that I was going to lose everything else that I had, including my third wife and the children. And that was a great emotional interference for me to stop. And that helped me to, when I sat down with my sponsor, to talk about it and to discuss it. And that played a big part in my stopping drinking.
And you got the 5 kids that were all from the third marriage?
Oh no, they were from my first marriage.
From your first marriage? What was that divorce like on them?
Nobody ever came right out and said what it was like. But over the years, I was able to keep my ear to the wall, so to speak, to hear comments from the children. And they would, I don't know if it's intuitive, but they would say things from time to time indicating that they were very glad I was finished drinking, or they're sure glad I put the cork in the bottle and stopped it. Their lives are much happier after I stopped drinking. And of course, my wife felt that way too.
So the divorce happened after you had the 5 kids by your first marriage?
That's right.
And then you got divorced at the end when the 5 kids were in that family. Then you get divorced.
Right.
Then you get remarried and you take those kids into the new family.
Right.
And then that happens a third time. Or by that time, are they old enough to
Yeah, they were old enough to be somewhat on their own, to understand Dad better, to understand their mother better, and their birthing mother. So I have to think that there's a lot of alcoholism out there in families that have gone through or are going through the same thing I went through. Perhaps not as bad, but as long as the husband keeps drinking and things begin to fall by the wayside, paying the bills on time, bringing the children up correctly, and that was another thing. The more I drank, the less they listened to me, because here was just another drunk talking. And that really hurt. Yeah.
That's heartbreaking, isn't it? So they survived that first breakup of that marriage. How long were you married the first time?
To their mother, about 23 years.
Okay. So by the time you got married the second time, most of them were?
They were mid to late teens. Of course, now my youngest grandchild is 20 years old.
Isn't that amazing?
So, yeah, things are much better at the house now.
Did your first 2 wives, did either one of them engage in Al-Anon or anything to help themselves?
One did.
What was the outcome of that?
She was able to secure enough votes on her side that she was convinced that she had to get away from me because I was drinking. And she did. She divorced me. But the children absorbed it. It seemed to absorb it as they were growing up, because they were getting older and more mature and more interested in their work at school or in their sports. Most of them were all good at sports. And as that continued, as their maturity continued, things got less important in the house. And my second wife that was divorced she was not screamingly mad at me, but she was disgusted with me. And that's the best I can say for that marriage.
We'll be right back. My friends, if you've enjoyed my AA Recovery interview series and my Big Book podcast, check out Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories from the first and second editions of Alcoholics Anonymous, missing from the third and fourth editions. It's an engaging audiobook that I narrated to bring these stories to life for AA members who've never seen them. These timeless testimonials were originally cut to make room for newer stories in the third and fourth editions. But their vitally important messages of hope are as meaningful today as when they were first published. Many listeners will hear these stories for the first time. Lost Stories of the Big Book is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. It's also available as a Kindle book and in paperback from Amazon if you'd like to read along with the audio. You're going to love it. And we're back. I've talked to other people that when their spouse went into Al-Anon, they actually copped a resentment against Al-Anon because it was like Al-Anon was continuing to expose more and more of what they were like as an alcoholic, as opposed to whatever blissful ignorance there is for the wife, let's say in that case, about their husband's alcoholism. They know that there's now a way out through Al-Anon.
That's right.
Did you feel any resentment towards Al-Anon whenever it was she was participating?
I did, but I realized that the basis of her getting mad was my drinking, not her going into Al-Anon. She used Al-Anon to lean on, and I'm sure the ladies in Al-Anon all told her what a mistake it was to stay with the drunk. But even today, I hear that comment from time to time from different people. The Al-Anon was very helpful. The Al-Anon, how can I put it, association, the leadership in Al-Anon was really very helpful to my second wife that was divorced. And Al-Anon gave them something to lean on, something to hold on to, something to believe in.
Yeah.
And they didn't have that before she went into Al-Anon.
Yeah. It's like the Al-Anon program is don't lose hope, but do something about it, right? Isn't that right?
Exactly.
Now, you've participated over the years in the Chapter 9 meetings where both spouses go to the Chapter 9 meeting. How many years were you doing that? When are you still doing that, Chapter 9 meetings?
Yes. Yeah.
What would you say about that for people who aren't familiar with Chapter 9 meetings?
Well, I still attend Chapter 9 meetings almost every Saturday night. And all I can say is that it does much more for the wife than it does for the husband. If I'm AA and my wife is in Al-Anon, she's getting a lot more out of Al-Anon than sometimes I used to get from AA. But that's not a put out to AA. It's just simple how the personality accepted both of these organizations. Now my wife is in Al-Anon. She tries to go to 1 or 2 meetings a week.
It's great.
I don't have to say anything about drinking to her because she's been there and understands all of that. And we get along okay. Of course, I'm not drinking either.
Oh, of course. Would you say that Chapter 9, which for anybody listening, Chapter 9 in the Big Book is the family afterwards?
Yes.
That's where the name Chapter 9 comes from. On an ongoing basis, you said you saw a difference in her?
Yes.
As participating in Al-Anon?
Yeah.
I often wondered how that works because I've gone to Al-Anon meetings over the years. Not a whole lot of them, but enough in a period of time, a number of years ago when I needed to. And there seemed to be a lot of, let's say, uncomfortability whenever I would show up as an active alcoholic in recovery in an Al-Anon meeting. I always felt like the spotlight was on me, especially as some of the newer members of the Al-Anon were discussing their issues with their alcoholic husband. I'm talking about in meetings where there were a sufficient number of women. What was it like when you first started to share in that Chapter 9 meeting in front of your wife?
I don't think we shared too much initially when she started going to Al-Anon. I understood that, and I still do today, that Al-Anon is really a great helping aid to the wife. Because if the husband is drinking and really has a problem with alcohol, the wife needs something or somebody or some group to feel like she's supported. And I don't mean financially, I mean supported. You get a pat on the back from people, which is what Al-Anon does many times. And I think that's great.
Yeah, they do a good job of it.
Yeah.
I tried the Chapter 9 meeting with my wife, and I was really, really hoping that she would really get interested in it. And then she went to some Al-Anon meetings, and when she first made the decision to not go back and not want to go, and I'd say, let's go to the Chapter 9 meeting, or why don't you go to an Al-Anon meeting? In fact, there was a time at which I said to her, I would get home and I'd say, I will watch the kids, and this is when our kids were small. I will watch the kids if you go to an Al-Anon meeting. And she took great offense at that. She said, you mean if I just want to go to the mall or to hang out with my sister, you won't watch the children? So what I was trying to do was influence her to go by offering to watch the kids if that's what she did. And that never really worked out so well. So over the years, she has not participated in Al-Anon, but she's found other ways in her life to be able to deal with me as a recovering alcoholic and other people in her family over the years who may have been active or recovered alcoholics. But it sounds to me like your wife has gotten quite enough out of it to want to keep doing it.
I would say she's been successfully folded into Al-Anon, and she has many friends there. She gets strength there. If I'm not giving it to her at home, she's getting strength by talking to some of her friends, and her friends tell her about their husbands or what's going on in their house and so forth.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like what they're saying to you is not something they thought of, but something they just came home with from the meeting?
Half the time. At least half the time, yes.
I've been known over the years to have my wife say something like, don't give me that AA spiel, you know, because it's whatever I'm saying sounds like it's something I would say in a meeting. I have to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah.
George, shifting gears for just a minute here, tell me about your early days in AA. What were those like for you? How did you feel going in the door and sitting in those meetings the first few weeks and months? What was your feeling overall?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Overall, I would say that for the first month or two, I felt lost. I felt without friends. I felt as though she couldn't care if I was there or not, she being the wife at the time. So it took me about at least 2 months, I would say, before I would miss the drinking. If I felt pressure from my wife or at the meeting, for the first couple of months, I wish I could have had a drink, even though I knew it would kill me. But it took about 2 months before I could go into a restaurant or a bar and not have a problem wanting to drink. Now, today, I have no desire whatsoever. In fact, I will go get away from it. And if I see any of my children who are now adult children drinking a can of beer, it troubles me. I don't say anything to them.
Yeah.
They know how I feel.
I can admit to you that I have the same concerns with my adult children. My daughter doesn't drink at all. She's never drank, and she's very much against. She won't even date a guy who drinks. I mean, she's very straight on that. My older son, you know, he'll have beer, he'll go out, but I haven't known him to have any problems with it. My younger son, he likes the evening cocktail, and what I have to be very careful of, because I notice myself wanting to pass judgment just watching the behavior I've seen, a small snapshot of their life. You know, oh, you're drinking a beer, maybe you ought to not drink that. But that's about me, that's not about them. And I have to remember that when my son is trying to explain to me how to craft the perfect vodka martini, I have to remember I'm the alcoholic in this equation. I'm the recovering alcoholic.
Yes.
He is not, and
Yes.
until if he, God forbid he does, but if he becomes one, then maybe something I say would make a difference. But he knows, because I've expressed to him in the past, if you ever get to the point with any drinking or any behavior that feels like it's getting out of control, I'm the go-to guy. And if you don't feel like I'm the guy, I'll point you out to some impartial third party. But to this day, I still have a difficult time watching them take a drink or drink a beer or know that at least one of them is smoking marijuana.
Yep.
Because of my own experience with it, I want to have them feel that same way, but how can they possibly feel that same way if they haven't gone through what I've done to feel that way?
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have the same feelings.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
Even today, I have the same feelings.
After all these years. What I was wondering about, and in fact, what I was trying to get to with that particular question, how you felt about the early days and months in AA. When you first started telling me about it, I envisioned a guy who was going to meetings but wasn't, that weren't that inclusive of him, and perhaps there wasn't as much outgoingness of the group to you. It sounds like the first couple of months, with regard to your marriage and the outside world, were a little tough for you. But how about within AA? Did you feel included, or did it take a while for you to feel like you were part of the tribe?
Well, that's a good question. My personality, aside from drinking, is that I'm probably more quiet in a group until I get to know the guys and the people. I would say that I felt lonely. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but after a couple of months, and I began to fit right in with the people, and they accepted me, and everything was fine. But it took a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's how it was for me too when I came in, and it may be one of the key reasons why I do things like greeting and other things, because I think men and women need to feel comfortable from day one. Because in the very first meetings people go to, we always say, you're the most important person in the room, and they focus on that person. I'm curious if, just using our imagination here for a minute, if you, George of today, could go back to one of those meetings in your first couple of months sober and could talk to the men in that room about how they treat George then, what would you say to them?
One of the loneliest times that an alcoholic can go through is when he comes back and people don't know how to treat him. They really don't. I didn't even know how to treat me for the first couple of months because it's a different feeling. You're on different sides of the table. And if you're used to being happy-go-lucky, the gift of the party, and all of that, and all of a sudden you came back and you don't drink, you're not happy-go-lucky because you're sober and you're trying to understand how you are feeling about different things. Mm-hmm. It took a while for me to get through that.
Yeah.
Even today, sometimes when I come into a strange meeting, not so much an AA meeting, but any other meeting, I'm rather quiet until I get to know the people.
Yeah, I get that. But I know exactly what you're talking about because I observe it all the time. But I think part of our service work is that we, as a group of recovering alcoholics with more experience, should be the ones who go out of our way to make sure the new guy has what he needs.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a handshake or just a group of people who know his name. And the newcomer isn't only the guy for whom it's his first meeting. It is people within their first weeks and months of sobriety.
Yes.
There's nothing that makes me feel worse about a meeting than when I see a guy come in and nobody talks to him at all.
Right.
And I'm thinking, that guy, and I know he's new because he just picked up a Desire chip 2 weeks ago, and he walks in the room and nobody's around him. I'm thinking, wait a second, that's not right.
Yeah.
Not that we're mollycoddling them, right? But we tell them on day one, you're the most important person, and then on day two, nobody knows who you are. That's a shock, don't you think?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So by the time the group finally got you under their wing and you started to feel more comfortable with it, what were some of the things you did, and how soon did you get a sponsor?
Well, I had a sponsor from the get-go.
Uh-huh.
I still have the same sponsor. You know who I'm talking about, I think. And I'm able to depend on his judgment. I know what it is, and I enjoy his judgment. He is knowledgeable. He is intelligent, and he still knows how to have fun. But he's a little conservative, like I am at first. As far as the meetings that I go to today, I don't have really any holdback. I'm me today when I go to a meeting. I'm natural today, and I'm outgoing, but I'm still conservative.
Right.
And I'm still a little quiet.
Yeah.
Until I get to know everything. But that's my best answer that I can give you. That's me.
From a personal standpoint, I just want to let you know in no uncertain terms that being able to see you on a regular basis at our men's meetings on Thursday just really warms my heart. The fact that you're having lunch with us after that meeting, it just because I remember seeing you day after day, week after week, year after year early on in my sobriety when we both went to that meeting over on the West Side. And then for a period of time, I think we were going to different meetings, and I didn't see you for quite a while. Yeah. And then I started seeing you again at that Thursday meeting, and I was like, you add such vibrant energy to that meeting. It makes me feel like the meeting is much more complete when you're there. And I do notice when you're not there. The room feels just a little bit off when you're not there. So I just wanted you to know that on the front end.
Thank you.
One of the things I like to ask people about is what events have happened within your sobriety that really kind of tested or strained or pulled at your sobriety or your ability to make a good decision?
Oh my. With sobriety comes a certain relaxed feeling about many things. Driving, money, friends, children. I'm much more adaptable. I am now more accessible, even to myself. The only way I can really answer that is to say that after I have been sober for a number of years, things are quite level. I don't have to go out and look for something like a drink to settle me down because I'm there already. And that is one of the biggest favors that I got out of sobriety, which is a levelness to my personality, and which I can carry through when I'm in a group of people or I'm just meeting a single person. I don't mean single versus married. I mean one person. And truthfully, as you're getting older, as I'm getting older, I find that, and here I am, I'm 89 practically, I feel very good about me and comfortable about where I am in life.
Yeah, and it shows.
Thank you.
It really does show, and I've noticed it this week especially, and I notice it when I see you at other times. You know, one of the things we talked about before when I was asking you to do this interview was people wondering whether they could stay sober through certain events happening in their lives. I've had events happen in my life that were catastrophic, and I had a place to go and talk about it. So I went to AA. And then there were a couple of other things that happened in other areas of my life where early on, if you had said, do you think you'll be able to get through that with AA? I might have said no. Do you have any recollections of periods during your sobriety where you were able to look at it afterwards where you said, thank God I'm sober, thank God I've got the men I've got in my life? Where if you hadn't had those things, you would have maybe not drank, maybe self-destructed, or maybe caused harm or whatever else. Can you think of some situations in your life that were like that?
Yeah. Even today, I can think about them. Or my wife comes, I walk in the house at night and she has a problem, or the finances aren't working out the way either of us thought. I don't get that excited about them. They're going to work out, and we have the wherewithal to get through it. All I can say is that when I was drinking and I would get these feelings, I would immediately turn to the bottle. And that didn't solve a thing. It just made matters worse. I'm able to look back now and say, I can remember when this happened or that happened, and I went back to the bottle, and then it was terrible for 2 or 3 days in my life. That doesn't happen anymore. I am much more level. I couldn't stand to go have a drink today because of my feelings about drinking and what it almost did to me.
Yeah.
It's an insidious, slow death. And if you don't catch it in time, you're done.
Yeah. And you and I have both seen it take out men that we cared about and
Yes.
and loved while they were here, and some of them decided to check themselves out.
Yeah.
It's tragic when I see it, and I wonder what degree of pain must they have been in when they pulled the trigger or stepped off the chair with
Yes.
a rope around their neck. But then I go to enough meetings and been to enough meetings over the years to hear about men who were facing the same situation that these guys committed suicide over, and they somehow got through it with AA. So I'm encouraged by that fact. You know, if everybody who had that kind of pain or trouble in their life that they had to end it and had no AA, I mean, where would there be a lot more funerals to go to? I'm sure about that. I was curious about service work in your 40 years of your sobriety. How has that played out?
I'm kind of sad about that. I have not been able to do service work as much as I would want to, because I really, until I retired, I was really quite busy. I'm still busy. I do a lot of our own things at the house, and I'm financial and otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you have the opportunity to get with some of these younger guys who are, we don't see as many of them anymore. I mean, there was a time at which that Tuesday night meeting that you and I used to go to over on the west side there were a lot of young guys in there. And then over time, I guess they found other meetings and other places to go.
Yeah.
Seems like, and maybe it's just because the baby boomers are getting older and that sort of thing, but I don't see as many young people around. Have you noticed that at all?
Yes, I have noticed it.
What do you think is the cause of that?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I really don't know. We're just not getting younger generations that we once had. AA makes it very easy, and Al-Anon makes it very easy to be comfortable in the program, in their respective programs.
Right.
I cannot answer that question. I don't know why they're not coming in.
I suspect, and I know that's a difficult question to answer, I suspect part of it is what I've noticed in doing all these interviews, the recurring themes that comes up for people who are going to treatment centers and then slipping and then going to another treatment center and then slipping is the handoff to AA. They're handing off a slippery baton. They get the person sober, they get them all excited about staying sober, they may even take them to a few AA meetings, but then they release them.
Yeah.
And it's like the AA hand that's being extended just doesn't get taken. And I get really concerned about that. But AA is separate from treatment centers. I know that. But you and I both know that if anybody's going to have a chance at staying sober, it's probably the only one they got is right here.
Yeah.
In this deal, right?
Right.
What was there about this weekend that made you want to come?
I had been thinking about coming to this retreat for some time, for maybe 6 months.
Yeah?
And about a month ago, my wife said, "Have you ever thought about going to one of those retreats?" And I said, "Yeah, I have been, and I've thought about it, and I'd like to go." She said, "Well, why don't you?" So I looked at her and I said, "I will, at the next one."
That's great.
And that was a couple of weeks ago, and here I am.
So glad that you made the decision to do it. And
Thank you.
I'd like to decode the reason why more people don't come, but as my sponsor used to say, you'll go when you need to go. You will find yourself driving there for the weekend, and
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And I'm so glad that you were able to sit down with me and do this today.
I have enjoyed today, and I've enjoyed going through in my mind the answers to your questions. They're very good, and at my age, it's good to think about when I was younger and what I did and the mistakes I made and the mistakes I didn't make.
Thank God for your presence in the program. I've always had a lot of respect for you, and I honor your sobriety and your desire to stay sober. I don't think we can ever take our sobriety for granted, no matter how old we get or how long we've been in the program. But you're one of those people that when I see you, I immediately know what contented sobriety looks at the age of almost 89. Well, George, I've enjoyed the hell out of this. This has been so much fun. And again, I love you. I'm glad you're in my life. And you're just a really beautiful man. And thanks so much for doing this.
It's a nice thing to say. I appreciate it. Thank you, Howard.
You bet. Well, that's it for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. I want to thank my guest, George M., for sharing his story. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed AA Recovery Interviews, will you please tell others how to listen to it? Spread the word. And please take a minute to give it a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That will help others find it. Of course, you can listen to many more interviews in this podcast series by following the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, and other podcast providers. Or tell Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa, play AA Recovery Interviews podcast. Or visit our website, aarecoveryinterviews.com, to hear every show, share your comments, and also contact us. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs, and no one receives financial gain from the show. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA, that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back. It'll be here soon.